Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the True Life Podcast. We are currently awaiting one of the greatest philosophers of our time, I believe, Mr. Simon Critchley, who will be joining us shortly. I wanted to give you guys and kind of an overview of the book that he's got here. The book is called Bald, and it is a 35 philosophical shortcuts. Awesome.
Hello.
Dr. Critchley, how are you?
I'm fine. Fine.
Fantastic. I am excited to talk to you today. Thank you for spending some time with me.
That's fine. Just let me get. Is it all working okay?
I think so. Is your sound is good? Is my sound okay?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Fantastic.
Sorry, my screen is a bit blurry. I don't know why it does this, but I'm using a different computer than normal. And I get this muslin cloth effect, which makes me look.
I thought it was the beers I drank last night. So
yeah. It feels that way, but it's just the way it comes up. So anyway, very nice to meet you, and very nice to speak to you, George.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I got a lot of questions, and I figured we'd just jump right into this interview here. And
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am here with the one and only Simon Critchley. He is an amazing philosopher. He's the moderator of the Stone column at the New York Times, author of numerous books from the Greek tragedies to David Bowie, the Hans Jonas professor at the New School in New York. And today we're going to be checking out his new book right here called Bald, which, well, you know what I really like about it? From the beginning, it's got an awesome cover, but then you take off the dust jacket and it's actually bald. There's nothing on there.
It's a bald book. Yeah, completely hairless object. Yeah, that's cool.
Nice. Really well done. And then I think most people confuse in the beginning, it says bald, and apparently you, sir, have no hair, which is what most people think the book is about. But in reality, it's more about being frank. Can you talk a little bit about what made you decide to write this book, or put it together, I should say?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's been written over the last 12 years, really, and the conceit of bald struck me as a funny one. But on one hand, I am bald, and on the other hand, I try and speak in this book in a very blunt, straightforward way. So it's an attempt to speak without an academic wig or a toupee, a scholastic toupee, an attempt to kind of speak directly, and also that I was forced to. I learned to speak more baldly working with a newspaper in the way I did. So it's bald. In fact, I use that as a hook, and then the idea about speaking boldly, speaking plainly, clearly about matters which are complex matters, but I think they can be addressed straightforwardly and can be accessible to a general reader, and I think that often seems like an easier thing to do. It's actually a hard for someone like me.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think that I wish more people would speak candidly? It seems to me that that's a pretty big issue in our world today, is whether it's because people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, or that maybe they don't thoroughly understand, but we tend to gloss over or use language that's so ambiguous. It's a miracle that we can actually communicate with each other sometimes.
Indeed. Yeah. I mean, this is, I try and, my belief since I was a student, really, it was an awful long time ago, was that philosophy is understandable to people with an interest in it, and it's the requirement on philosophy is to make itself heard in the public realm in clear and distinct ways, and that's what I try and do. And so it's an attempt to kind of not hide things away, just speak directly and frankly and honestly about things which I think are of great importance to not just to me, but hopefully to other people. Yeah.
Yeah, I one thing I find really refreshing about your work is the way that you argue from philosophy, and that like not all things, only part of life is intelligible. And you say in your other book, from the Greek tragedies, you know,
Mm.
we can only know what we can know. And so much, it seems to me that there's a lot of philosophy professionals that believe in something different than the style you argue from. Can you tell people a little bit about the style in which you come from philosophy?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's I think that I think that the strangely enough, I mean, the purpose of philosophy is to divest people of their illusions and their illusions of certainty about things. That's a big thing that we do. So people have huge ideas, huge theories about history, about what's going on, about the nature of the universe, and philosophy is, should set out to kind of question those, to disappoint people in a way. And so I see philosophy as a kind of a sobering activity. That actually we know a lot less than we think we know, and that's okay. The philosophical tradition, I guess, I'm from is that I did philosophy at a provincial university in England, and then got very interested in what was going on in France, Germany, and I learnt those languages, studied what's called cultural philosophy, which is much more concerned with philosophy in the English-speaking world is dominated by what's called the analytic tradition, which is all fine and good, and there's some very clever people there, done wonderful things, but it's often far too uh, limited in its scope. That philosophy is something which takes place within academic departments, addresses other academics, and is a discipline which is kind of and it's more closely linked to the sciences, to the empirical sciences, and to logic. And the approach to philosophy that I take is much more directly connected with culture, with the life that people live, the way people think. And philosophy has to address the conditions of its time and place, the time and place of its emergence, and to take account of audience and all of those things. And in this case, that means addressing an audience which is audience of people that say read the New York Times, or then trying to kind of show that really quite interesting insights can be formulated in ways that are intelligible to a newspaper reader, and nothing huge is lost in that translation, and a lot is gained, I think. So yeah, so I know I've got I don't know, I've got odd sets of interests. So I've got an interest in, I come out of this a fascination with a whole range of thinkers, people like Hegel, Heidegger, and also I've got very kind of broad interests, and for me, it's what I do as a philosopher is connected to the music I listen to the sport I watch, what I think about, the people I meet and talk to. So it's kind of everything, it touches on all sorts of aspects of life. So yeah, nothing should be alien to a philosophical disposition, in my view, and it should be out there in the culture and in the way people think about things as possible, rather than being enclosed in an ivory tower.
I like that. Yeah, it seems to me like there's been like a huge problem with explanation over experience, and sometimes people that are in the ivory tower or that are locked in education their whole life, they're learning from a guy who learned from a guy who learned from a guy.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're out there playing soccer, if you're out there like yourself playing in a band and maybe having a good time and having experiences in life, you get to see things from different points of view. And it seems that that is where you can start connecting all the different philosophies together. I
Yeah,
was,
and
I'm
trusting
sorry.
experience, trusting, not being. I'm not a skeptic. I'm not really a skeptic by disposition. So if somebody tells me something, I'm inclined to believe it and then try and understand that experience. So, and that means that the scope of philosophy for me is very, very broad. It certainly includes, all the music I care about, and kind of philosophers, or what you mentioned in your email, Philip K. Dick, who's normally seen as a sci-fi writer, but he was
Right.
great philosophical interest. But he was kind of he was a garage philosopher. He was an outlaw, and that's good. I'm all in favor of that.
Yeah, he's such an interesting character to. He's such an interesting guy that was out of his garage and just coming up with these ideas that most people would be jealous of. I mean, sometimes the ideas that are so far out there are the ideas that we can learn so much from, which it's it brings me to a point in your book. For the first time, I had started thinking about this. First off, the way you write is amazing to me. You're able to pack a lot of information into a short, sweet essay that allows people to think in different ways. And one of the first essays you wrote was talking about the Athenians and how the people they conquered wanted hope, and the difference between hope and faith. And I believe that was in one of the third essay there, where the Athenians, they are going to attack am I going to pronounce this right? The Melians?
Melians, that's right.
Melians. And could you maybe just tell people a little bit about your ideas of hope and how it can lead to hopelessness?
Yeah, it was. This was an essay that was written it was published on, I think, Easter Sunday, 2014. So I was using that as a way of attacking ideas of hope. And at that time, in those distant days when Barack Obama was president, and there was still an idea of the audacity of hope against hope, and it seems an awful long time ago now. I was trying to kind of press that idea of hope and use this story, which is Thucydides, who's one of the two great historians of Greece, the history of the Peloponnesian Wars. And he tells the story of the Athenians. They show up on an island, and they have a very simple message. They say, submit to us or we will kill you. and they decide, they try to prevaricate, try to kind of delay and say, we're going to talk. The Athenians don't talk to people, they talk to the Melian representatives, their governors, and the governors play for time, and they try to the Athenians, and eventually the Athenians lose patience with them, and they kill all of the male citizens, and they enslave the women and children, as was the custom in the ancient world. And one of the things that the Athenians say to the Melians is that you seem to. The Melians say, we can still hope for things. We can hope that this will end up well. And hope for the Athenians is prodigal. Once you go down that road, you're never going to be done. And hope, in the view that I argue in this essay, is by clinging to hope, we often make suffering worse. We could replace the idea of hope with an idea of courage, which is what I try to do in the essay. And there's a lot. With regards to the first point you made, it's I like hiding things. So that in writing, I like to have things underneath the surface, which if some people will know all the allusions, references I'm making, there are things going on, but you don't need to know anything about that. So it gives me enormous pleasure to kind of give the appearance of something pretty simple and straightforward, and there's all sorts of things, more tangled things going on beneath the surface of the water. But I think hope is a potentially politically really questionable idea, and it's often all refusing to face up to reality, and we would do better to face up to reality courageously and to run away from reality with some idea of hope. That's kind of what I'm up to in that piece.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating thing to think about. To me, hope Hope seems like a stripper that works the day shift, like she just it's so sad in so many ways, but so many people cling to it, and it seems that that's the one thing they have, but it's such a, I hope this isn't horrible to say, but it seems like such a weak thing to hold on to when you're so, I believe people are so much stronger than they give themselves credit for. And instead of clinging to hope, if they would cling to, I'm not sure belief is much better, but maybe if they could cling to something, I'm not sure what they could cling to, but it just seems to me that hope, I believe you use the reference later in the book as a reed, like we are like reeds and just kind of bending in the wind. But
yeah. We're reeds. We're the weakest reed in nature. It's Pascal. We can be wiped away with this. I wrote this. This is one of the last. That's the last piece in the book, which is written during April 2020, when the coronavirus was really bad in New York. So it was around that, and the idea that we can be, the idea of human beings as these kind of strong, rational masters of the universe. No, we're weak reeds that can be blown away with a virus, with a and everything can fall apart. And our strength consists in accepting that weakness, right? There's a great virtue to that. So believing yourself strong when you're not is actually real strength consists in accepting your weakness and embracing it, and embracing it in thought. Another line that Pascal says is that dignity consists in thinking, right? And we think in that weakness, which is the weakness of the human condition, and we should strive to think well and not to ourselves. So with regard to hope, in place of hope, I think we need a really historically informed realism. So if we're thinking about situations, say for example, what's going on in Ukraine right now, to understand that we need a historical understanding of that part of the world and its history and the complexity of that situation before we immediately run to a response and say, this person is evil, this person is good, we should look for this and we should condemn that. It's always more complicated than that.
Yeah, I could not agree anymore. And it seems criminal to me that we have really intelligent people that utilize media or maybe the lack of education of some people to simplify things. Like everybody should know that things are much more complicated than we're being told. And it saddens me to think that people turn to hope. And it kind of begs the question, like when we were speaking about the audacity of hope, and that was Barack Obama is such a beautiful speaker, and the rhetoric that he used in order to get people to think things was magnificent in how he did it. I don't agree with that, but from a philosophical standpoint, doesn't it seem almost criminal that people so smart can use rhetoric to change the behavior of such mass amounts of people to do horrible things?
Yeah, I think it's I wrote a piece, I got into terrible trouble for this in 2008, called Barack Obama and the American Void. Barack Obama in Harper's Magazine, and it wasn't an attack on Obama, it was an attempt to understand him. And that's why I read all of his autobiographical works.
Right.
At that time there was already a lot to read. Now there's a lot more. He had the extraordinary ability of appearing to be something that people wanted. So he could, to liberals, he would appear liberal, to more conservatives, he would appear conservative, to people that were concerned with, let's say the politics of race, he could appear to be concerned with the politics of race. He was kind of like a mirror that reflected back what people wanted to see, and that's brilliant when you can do with such soaring rhetoric. But but what was at the heart of that was something deeply empty, and he was doing that for, let's say, let's say, understandable reasons, in the sense in which, in the context of Bush 2, there was another. Again, this seems terribly kind of old-fashioned to think these terms, but the kind of division that was experienced in the early after 9/11, and the campaigns in Afghanistan and Iraq had led to this real beginning of a divisiveness in the United States, and Obama was offering a kind of a balm to kind of heal that, and it worked. It worked, and but it doesn't mean that we should. But if that hope is just a kind of a nice thing to say that covers over the same operations of power, let's say the same foreign policy, the same drone strikes, the same use of political assassination and the rest, then I think there's a we can accuse him of being hypocritical, to say the least. So I think I don't know whether I think if you think of someone like Thucydides, it's actually quite bleak, right? There is, human affairs are always going to be defined by conflict and the attempt to tell lies and foster illusions, and all we can do really is to try and point that out and to try and take people with us. And but is that going to produce the kind of change that is often talked about politically? No, I don't think that such a thing is possible. So I think I'm a little bit of a realist and a pessimist and a skeptic when it comes to political talk and political action, on whichever side, actually.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's fascinating to think about, and I wonder what Thucydides would say today about what he might, if he was telling the story today, about the story he told about the Peloponnesian War. I would think he would be telling the Ukrainians the same thing. Like there's I don't know. I often wonder what it would, if the time of Thucydides and the wars that happened are no different than the wars that are happening now. And it seems to me that human conflict, as you said, is something that is always with us, and it's so devastating. But it seems to be the one thing that propels us forward at the end. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, war is the is the kind of in a way the mother of invention, and even philosophical invention. It's you can plot the whole history of philosophy in relationship to war. War is, but one thing I'd say would be, I remember there was a wonderful one of the people that I don't know, but I was really, really happy endorsed the book was Jonas, and the documentarian who has done some wonderful movies. But one movie must be around 2004 was called The Fog of War. And The Fog of War was it was a long interview, and he has a very particular kind of interview technique and even camera technique, which is really good. Was with McNamara, who was Defense Secretary or Secretary of State under Nixon, and the Johnson in the American involvement in Vietnam, and was seen on the left as the great evil figure, the great Satan of the America's involvement in Vietnam. Okay, so but McNamara is just interviewed, and he's asked questions. He's a very intelligent man, and he says the first rule of war is very simple: sympathy with the enemy. Sympathy with the enemy, and that's what the Greeks were very good at. We're very bad at that. So if we're interested, say, for example, in what's going on now in Russia and Ukraine, then we begin with sympathy for the enemy, in this case the Russians, and try and understand how they view the world. And they're not crazy, they're not deluded. There's a deep historical picture that drives a deep sense of grievance, and that has to be understood if you're engaged in anything like conflict resolution or diplomacy, or so if people just go around saying is evil, or he's a satanic figure, he's a dictator, you're missing the point. You have to understand the context out of which he's speaking and try and understand that before you understand, get a full picture. And that means, with regard to the news media, it does mean going deeper than the information that we're provided with. That's for sure. So I'm not saying we should defend the Russians. On the contrary, but you have to understand the way they see the world and the sense of victimization that they have, the grievance they have, and the sense that in their minds they're defending Ukraine against what they see as a nationalist, even Nazified, government, which is, and they're defending the Ukrainian people against their government. It's a, I think it's a wildly incorrect thing to say, but you have to understand it before you can engage. So the first thing you do, if you're actually interested in thinking through concrete situations, is begin with sympathy for the enemy.
I think this is as crazy as of time it is right now. It's such a beautiful opportunity to understand philosophy. I think you're giving people an education right now on philosophy and how to see the world in a way that is more complex and in a lot of moving parts than in reality. Which brings me back to your book. I've noticed through your book that there's this beautiful ebb and flow. And just so everybody sees it again, this is the book right here, ladies and gentlemen. It's called Bald, and it is a book that you definitely want to read. And I've noticed throughout your book, there's this ebb and flow of wonder and disappointment, and this movement that goes between the divine and time that seem to kind of run through the book.
Okay.
And we've already spoken a little bit about the ebb and flow of time from the Ukraine to the Peloponnesian Wars, but there seems to be another strand that I've noticed, and that is the divine and time. We go from Dostoevsky's Inquisitor to Philip K. Dick, which both have a element of the divine in them. And I was wondering, what is it? Do you find those particular two things to be fascinating, or did you realize that you wove those stories in between each other, or what can you tell us about that?
Well, it's a lifelong fascination with religion, from a perspective which is not really a faith perspective, as people would say here. I don't really have I'm fascinated, or I feel most closely the kind of the pull of certain strands of Christianity, but and in fact, I'm just opposite where I am now in New York. Is opposite St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Oh wow!
See, there we are. Look, it's St. Patrick's.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that Rockefeller stands to the other side of the street? Yeah, and I'm fascinated with that, and I'm impatient with what I see as evangelical atheism, which was maybe not so fashionable now, but was very much in mode with people, Christopher Hitchens and the rest. And so there's I guess an attempt to, I guess very simply, to see religion as a social phenomenon, and a social phenomenon which is shared and which is real for the societies that experience it, and to take that the kind of in the way that an anthropologist would. And so one of the there's religion in many of the essays in the book, but just to pick one, and it was you mentioned in your email that perhaps we could think about. It's that I wrote a series of pieces in 2019. I was living in Athens and working there for a few months. I then formed this idea of writing short essays from Athens, and I did 8 of them, and this was not my idea at the time. But I began to get interested in what's called Elefsina or Elefsis or Eleusis. People sometimes say in English. It's the ritual site just outside of Athens where the mystery took place, and I went there. Woman that runs the site. I went there with a couple of friends and studying it and then reading it through. And there we have an interesting conundrum. On the one hand, we think of Athens as the birthplace of democracy, which it was. Nobody had the idea of a political rule based on the equality of all citizens before, but that's what the Athenians, and they were intensely rational, very legalistic people, very litigious, and they made decisions together in the public square. They declared the law, and on the other hand, just up the road from Athens is this place, Elefsis, which was an obligation on all Athenians in the mysteries, and we don't know what happened. And I try and, as it were, explain what we can say with some degree of the essay. But there's a connection between democracy, rule of law, equality, and participation in the sacred mysteries. These two things are not in contradiction, they're consistent with each other. And for us to see, it's quite tricky. What can be the connection between being a citizen and taking part in a secret mystery? The thing about the mysteries is that whatever happened in Elefsis had to stay in Elefsis, and nobody could betray mysteries because they would be they'd be killed. And so to take seriously the dimension of ritual in society, and not to be dismissive of religious belief, and again to try and understand it, not as a set of cognitive states, in the sense in which, when people that don't understand religion will meet a religious person and say, well, do you believe in the existence of God? Do you believe in immortality? Do you believe in the life to come? People are unclear about that. They'll still participate in the practice. They'll still do the rituals, and it's that ritual that really interests me. When we're doing things together without necessarily, and how those weird secret mysteries could be connected to the activity and the kind of lifeblood of democracy kind of interests me as well.
That's so. I love that the series you did on Alexis. It was a little disheartening because everybody wants to believe that there was this incredible, mysterious, psychedelic experience that happened there that overwhelmed everybody. Mm-hmm. And the truth may be a little bit more sobering. But however, when I read your essay on that, it really made me believe that in fact is what we're missing, and it ties together religion. When you have a ritual or a rite of passage like that, it's something that not only points to the mystery, but you get to participate in the mystery with. Mm-hmm. So it's like, everybody gets to work together and see themselves through this rite of passage. And it seems to me that is what religion is. Religion is this understanding that we are all part of the whole, regardless mm-hmm. if you call it God or Buddha or Allah. It's mm-hmm. this understanding that we participate in something that additionally points to the goal. And I think that
I agree.
Even reading your book, it seems to me, if I peel back a page or two, or some of the beautiful artwork in the words that you've used, I can see it pointing to that. I think we're moving towards a type of awakening. And I hate to use mystical terms like that, but it seems that there is this new spirituality being developed, and it comes from the conflict that people like Hitchens and Harris have put out there. Like, no, you can't have this. This is where all evil is from. And
Mhm.
I've got that topic from your book, and I just want to say thank you for that. It's well done, and I really like the part on Eleusis and the fact that you went there and you got to see the little well where Demeter would pop out of, or
Yeah.
Persephone would pop out of, and maybe you could explain a little bit more to the people about what it was like to go there.
Oh, right. So the mysteries were over 8 days, and the participants in the mystery had a series of activities. You know, slow procession. There would be they go to the water. Various kind of sacrifices and offerings were made, and then eventually they would make their way along the sacred way to, and they'd be out the temple site, and the temple site is a series of theaters, like a series of stages, and you go through. There's a drama to the movement of the stages. It's extraordinary, and also the Aeschylus, the great Greek tragic poet, was from and was desecrating the mystery. Use some of the ritual activity onto the stage. So outside, the night is falling. There's some fires. People are fasting. They've been fasting for a long time, and there is dancing. There is fire. They're waiting for the ritual to begin, and a drink which is called Kupion. And this is where a lot of the theories take root. That Kukion was a kind of hallucinogenic, some people have thought, and therefore when the participants of the mysteries or the Mysti went through, they were tripping. I mean that might be the case. There might have been a psychoactive ingredient in this drink, but people were they were hungry. They were engaged in an important venture, a participation in the mystery that you got to do once, twice, but most people did it once and they knew that something of huge importance was going to be shown to them. And so they were in a susceptible state. And what they experienced together. It was also an egalitarian. So, for example, the oracle at Delphi, very, very rich to get into Delphi to afford the massive extortionate fees they required. But Eleusis was basically there could be slaves, there were children, men, women, old and young, all together, and in that, and then there are a series of things that happen. You basically get because the site of Eleusis is where Demeter, after she lost her daughter Persephone, in Eleusis, and she's crying into this well, and then God appears and says to her, that there's a way through this, and and there's an intercession, and then eventually her daughter is returned. Demeter is returned to her, but she's tricked. She eats a handful of pomegranate seeds, which will oblige her to return to Hades, to the world of darkness for months every year. So that's the story. So it's about a mother and a lost daughter who returns to the underworld every year. And the name in Greek is ceres in Latin, and it's linked to cereal, right? To grain, to cereal. And in Greek, cereal is Dimitriaka, right? So the idea of cereal. So another way of looking at this mystery is that it's about it's a reenactment of foundations of society, and this needs to be reenacted in order that there will be a harvest, there will be rain, and there will be food. this idea, which is sort of lost to us, which was there in just about every society, every kind of Neolithic, ancient society, was that the rituals that the society, the rituals that people were involved with, were about the reproduction of this social form. How does this continue? And the continuance of the social form requires food. So at the center of, or rather to the start of the mystery site, is a huge grain cellar. And the goddess is grain, the goddess is food. And by participating in this ritual, you can hope for the continuation of life through nourishment. But maybe there may be a more mysterious aspect to it in terms of this. This could be an idea of eternal life, or a life that is reborn, that is renewed. But what happened in the participants go through this series of stages. It takes an awful long time. They're hungry. They've been given this barley, water, grain, drink, active substance in it. They're moving through these stages. Then they get to the central area, Sterion. And in the Sterion, which is enormous, it's like an enormous theatre. You can just see the remains of it. There's an enormous theatre in the center of this huge space. It would have been darkness, torches, flaming. Was something called the Anacteron, and in the Anacteron was where the priests, the heroes, who were just from two families, would engage in the rituals. And we don't know anything about what happened, but there are three words that are reported, actually, I think from a Christian source, a later Christian source, and three enigmatic words, which are dromina, dagnumina, and legomina. Things done, things and things said. So things were done, things were shown, said. What was shown, what was said, we don't know. It might just be, and this is the opinion of the archaeologist I was talking to, it might just be that is grain, right? Is a head of barley or of wheat, and this means that there is food and there will be more food. And so the religious ritual is the possibility continuation of life, and that of course finds an echo in full of ritual connected with Christianity and with many other religions, right? We get the death of on Friday, and then the resurrection on Easter Sunday. So so this is not lost to us. Is there spirituality emerging? Maybe. I think I think we have to accept that religion is not going away. Religion has to be understood and grasped as a social phenomenon, and respected too, not dismissed. Yeah, that's, I guess, what I say for a start. And I think in this country, in the United States, that means taking extremely seriously the Bible and Christianity in particular, because the extraordinary thing about Christianity is that it's not just the religion of the colonizers, of the people from Europe in here. It becomes the religion of the former slaves, right? And it gives a common rhetoric to the oppressor and the oppressed, which has all sorts of cross-racial possibilities. And so I think if you're interested in understanding this place, the States, and understanding what might be possible, to begin with a kind of full understanding of the Bible, because the Bible has possibilities which maybe we take a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, that was really well done. Thank you for that.
Okay.
It's it's a great. I'm envious that, and it makes me inspired to want to go there and have that same
Yeah,
new form of a Lucis trip, and it reminds me, in your book, you're a big footballer, and there's
yeah,
so many similar. Have you thought about the similarities between being in a football match and being at a Lucis? Like, they're
yeah,
both kind of psychedelic. It's like you're this team together and you're experiencing life and loss and the potential to win. And it, in so many ways, it seems like sports is something that we can, in a weird way, it has taken the place of the ritual. And
yeah.
those of us who have gone to a big game and been part of a crowd, I
Hmm.
use an example of going to the horse races. That's like one of the only spots you'll see a millionaire hug a homeless person. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter if you're an emperor or a slave, but we find ourselves in these moments, be it a Lucis or be it at a football match or at a horse race, where we can let go of the labels that were put upon us and
Hmm.
just enjoy ourselves as the unity there.
Yeah.
And I think that's something to be said about a Lucis. I had one more point that I wanted to ask you. Are you familiar with this idea of ontology recapitulates phylogeny? I think I'm saying that right.
Hmm.
Where we start off as like a sperm and we meet the egg and then we become this little tadpole. Like we relive every stage of our evolution
Oh yeah.
in the womb. And
Mm.
might that also be what's kind of going on at a Lucis? Like, we go there and
Hmm.
we become one, and we see that everybody has loss. Like, people lose their children, people die, and
Yeah.
when we see that, it kind of breaks down the barriers and we come together. And then at the end, like you say, we're given food and we're like, look, it's going to be all right as long as we work together in order to do this. And I
Yeah.
just
The
wanted to
ritual.
bring that up.
Yeah, the ritual. Reenacts or replays the entire history of the society, and indeed the
Yeah.
species. So yeah, I agree with that. And in relationship to sport, well, in particular soccer, which is the sport that I spend most of my time reading about, watching, and thinking about. It's yeah, it's one powerful place where ritual activity goes, and it's extremely interesting. So one there's a couple of pieces on soccer in the book, and one of them is from I when I was in Athens. I've been there, been going there for about 5 years. There's a bar, a little football club bar, and I know all the people, and there's a whole ritual connected with that. Really know them. I mean, I don't, most of them don't speak English, and my Greek is poor, but we're supporting the same team. We're together, and the levels of I don't know, frenzy, collective frenzy, which we're engaged with there are extraordinary. And also on Sunday, what day today is Tuesday today. On Sunday, my team Liverpool played Chelsea in the League Cup final. It was, and I was in the one of the Liverpool FC bars in on First and Eight called the Grafton, and it was absolutely wild with and when we won, the noise, the kind of the sheer joy, the shared joy that uh, we experienced at that moment. It was, and then singing, so the way in which sport, soccer works is through song, and in Liverpool we have a lot of songs, and someone will begin the song, and then you're watching the game and singing songs. The ways of dealing with the anxiety or tension of watching the game. You don't know if you win or if you're going to lose, and this was, but you hope that you're going to win, and so I think you can learn a lot through that. And these people, so the people I watching the game with on Sunday, and this happens a lot to me. There's two or three people I'm quite close to, but the bar's full of strangers. But for the purposes of watching the game, we're friends. We are, we're on the same team. We support the same. We're proud, and this isn't just a sport activity. This is a whole set of values beliefs, and this means a lot more than 22 men kicking a piece of plastic around on a pitch. This is like, and also with me, I think this is really important. What what uh, what living areas of my life are there that actually connect me metaphorically with the past? Right? I can tell you about the past. I can remember the past. My father was my on my grandmother's grave. Football club emblem, which was weird at all until I showed it to someone and they said, yeah, well, she was a Liverpool fan, obviously. And then, so we've got, between, say my grandmother, grandfather, my father, me, and I have a son who's 30, that's 100 years of continuous support for this team. And it's not just about the team, it's a commitment to a whole framework. And that thing, and it's passed on as you are watching it and celebrating. There are very few areas of life that resonance, it seems to me. And I wish get involved.
This brings up such an amazing point to me, because we were talking about in your book, you spoke about time.
Yeah.
And how, our idea is that we move forward through time. But what you just explained to me is it possible that you have experienced the same time as your grandmother, your grandfather, and that your son will, by going and experiencing these games and singing the same songs and hugging the same stranger when so-and-so scores a goal or the first pint or whatever? Like, isn't it amazing to think that we can see and experience time? We can move through time, but no one talks about that. But I think you get into that in your book a little bit. Like, what do you think about that?
It's right. I mean, it's I was sent I was offered a ticket to the game by my cousin David, and I couldn't go. I couldn't get back because of work here, work commitments in New York. But he went, and his father and my father used to go to see games in the 1950s, and the second Ray and my dad went to see Liverpool play, and my cousin and I maintain this close connection around the team, and he looks a lot like his dad, and I suppose I look a lot like my dad, and so we're both ghosts at that point. We're being ghosted by the past, and we're trying to pass that on down to the next. Since whereas the order of time gets very confused. We have an idea of time as a linear. Time is a line. Time, no longer now, the past, now, the present, and not yet now, the future. And that is a kind of linear idea of time, which is how we get through the days, for the most part. But there's also an idea of time as circular, as a time when people, in a sense, merge and mix. And this is something that Philip K. Dick calls orthogonal time, which he explains as a circle that contains everything. And he gives the image, which I think is a lovely image, something from the end of the book where I talk about this, that he's thinking about orthogonal time as a circle that contains everything. He compares this to everything that was, just as grooves on an LP contain that part of the music which has already been played, and then here after the stylus track. Think about it in terms of an image of an LP. Think about that in, say, the seemingly final chord at the end of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper, which on the original that chord would just keep gather an intensity. At that point, what's past and what's future begins to and blur, and and that's both a useful thing slightly terrifying, that in a sense that we are, we are haunted by ghosts, and we are ourselves ghosts, who maybe will haunt others in the future. Um, Teaching Shakespeare's Hamlet this, and I'm very preoccupied with ghosts. That's what I'm meant to be doing today. Anyway, so yeah, fascinating stuff. The time isn't a line; it's at least a circle or a loop, and we can't simply do past, present, future. And most importantly, if we think we're, this is what the point I try to make in the book on tragedy. If we think we're through with the past, then we're ruined, because the past is going to destroy us. So we have to respect the past, embody the past, live it, pass it on to the next generations.
Yeah, like it's beautiful. Doctor, I want to be real mindful of your time. I know we're close to an hour, so.
Yeah, I've got to go in a minute.
Okay. I think, is there, first off, thank you so much. I've got all your links below. Is there anything else that maybe you could leave us with before you leave? Like what do you want people to get out of this book that if you could tell people or hope that, maybe not hope, but what would you want them to get out of this?
I'd like them to, it's the, the idea that, obviously a kind of open-mindedness, an open-minded fearlessness. That's what I hope is communicated by the book. That if you can live in fear. It's easy to live in fear, and in a sense, the world makes more sense instead of living in fear. You live in fear of what's going to happen, what someone's going to say about you, so on and so forth, particularly with social media and the rest. But I think there's if we can have a kind of a fearlessness, and open-mindedness, and connected with that. This might not come through in the book so much, but it's certainly what's behind it. Is a kindness to treat things with a kindness and not to assume that not to assume you know what they mean and you can already interpret it, but to allow yourself to be surprised by phenomena. And that's this is like a version of Dave Chappelle's mantra, be nice and don't be scared. If I could get people to think philosophically in terms of don't be scared, that would be great. So one thing I try to encourage, it's very hard to encourage, even with myself it's hard to encourage, is courage. It's fearlessness when it comes to thinking. And this doesn't belong to any elite group of people. This is completely accessible. The most fantastic things ever written in the history of the world are instantly available, and you can just swim in them or listen to them or whatever it might be. And it's and also another thing that I'm very passionate about, which is kind of how I taught myself out of a job, is in a way I believe in teaching, but I believe much more importantly in self-teaching, in being autodidacts. And I'm very fond of people that have cultivated amateur knowledges of things, and I wish there were more. What we need is less education, and that used to be what public life was. And but now we can do that and make excuses.
Well, fantastic. I think you accomplished that. I think that your words paint a picture of fearless experience and instills in people a curiosity that that helps to inspire their own exploration. And I've read multiple articles multiple times, and I keep getting things into there. So thank you for your writing style and your mission to come out there and try to help people help themselves by investigating more. And I really thank you for taking time for me and my audience. Ladies and gentlemen, buy this book, Bald. It is a masterpiece. It's fun to read. Where is it at? It's fun to read, and you'll learn a lot. I know that I did. And Doctor, you're welcome back here anytime. I know you have other books. I would love to talk to you about them. I hope you have a great day. I hope Liverpool becomes the best. Okay. Have a good afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Bye.